All right, let's get into one of the most powerful stories in American literature. We're going to follow the personal journey of the narrator from Ralph Ellison's classic novel, Invisible Man, a story all about the struggle to figure out who you are in a world that just refuses to see you. So, right from the very first line, he hits us with this. But, this isn't a science fiction story. He's not a ghost, he's not a superhero, he's a man of flesh and bone, totally real, but he feels completely unseen by the people around him. So, how is that even possible? Well, it's because his invisibility isn't physical, it's psychological. It's like a prison built by other people's perceptions. Society doesn't actually see him. Instead, they see a symbol, or a stereotype, or just a problem that needs to be managed. And when your actual humanity gets erased like that, you might as well be invisible. His entire story is about trying to break out of that prison. So, what do? How do you even navigate a world that won't acknowledge you're there? For our narrator, the only way to survive is to perform. He learns really fast that to get by, he has to wear a whole collection of masks, constantly changing who he is to match what everyone else expects him to be. And his whole life pretty much becomes a series of these roles. For the white college trustees, he plays the part of the good, humble student who knows his place. Then later, for this radical group called the Brotherhood, he becomes their star orator, their voice. But here's the thing. Every time he puts on one of these masks, he buries his true self a little deeper. He gets so lost in playing all these parts that he starts to forget who he actually is underneath it all. At first, he thinks this is the secret, right? He thinks if he just plays the game, works hard, and says the right things, he'll finally get a piece of the American dream. But what he slowly, painfully discovers is that the game is rigged. For him, the dream isn't a real goal. It's more like a trap, an illusion, designed to keep him running and running toward a finish line he's never allowed to cross. Okay, so this brings us to a really important symbol in his journey, his briefcase. As he goes through life, moving from one identity to the next, each one eventually falls apart. But instead of just leaving the wreckage behind, he starts collecting the pieces. And this is absolutely crucial. He learns he can't just escape his history. It's a part of him, so he carries it. That briefcase becomes this personal museum of his own life, a container for every single broken identity and every painful memory. And the things inside are just so heavy with meaning. He's got a piece of a leg iron from a man who escaped a chain gang. He's got this degrading Sambo doll that he finds, and he just can't bring himself to get rid of it. These aren't just objects, they're the physical proof of the history, both personal and collective, that he has to carry with him everywhere. This is where the story really takes a turn. Our narrator starts to wake up. He begins to see through all the lies, all the manipulation he's been subjected to. But here's the twist. Before he can see the world clearly, he has to first recognize his own blindness. Blindness is a huge theme in this book. It seems like almost every single character he runs into is blind in some way. Ellison calls it a failure of the inner eye. And the key part is that it's often willful. It's a choice not to see. Why? Because actually seeing the narrator's humanity would mean they'd have to confront their own comfortable beliefs and their own place in the world. And most people just don't want to do that. And what's wild is how two groups that seem like total opposites end up treating him the exact same way. The rich college trustees use their charity as a way to keep control. The radical brotherhood, on the other hand, uses its rigid ideology to turn him into a pawn for their cause. See the pattern? Neither of them wants to actually free him. They just want to own his story and use it for their own purposes. So all of this chaos and betrayal leads to the story's climax. The narrator ends up retreating completely from the world. He finds a forgotten, sealed-off basement and decides to live there, underground. But this isn't him giving up. Far from it. This is a deliberate choice to stop reacting, to get off the grid, and to finally start the work of figuring out who he is on his own terms. And while he's down there in this underground space, he becomes obsessed with a very strange, very specific number, 1,369. What in the world could that mean? It's the number of light bulbs he uses to cover the ceiling of his new home. He rigs the wiring to power every single one of them, so his hibernation, his retreat, is actually an act of illumination. He is literally flooding the darkness with light, trying to see himself clearly for the first time, and maybe, just maybe, figure out how to bring some light to the blind world above. And in that intensely bright basement, he finally gets it. It all clicks.
First, he has to completely reject all the labels that other people have tried to stick on him. Second, he realizes he can't just ditch that briefcase full of painful memories. He has to own his past, his heritage, all of it, and weave it into who he is. And finally, he has to embrace being a complex, messy, self-defined person. This really captures his entire transformation, doesn't it? He goes from being a ghost, constantly changing shape based on how other people looked at him, to becoming a conscious, solid person. He finally achieves visibility, not by making others see him, but by finally truly learning how to see himself.
The story ends with him getting ready to come back out into the world, and it leaves us with this huge question that really is for all of us. He spent his entire life performing for other people. It just makes you wonder, if you were to stop, if you dropped all the masks, who would you actually become?